Hi guys, it is 2:37 p.m. on Sunday, June 8th. Let's talk about what's going on in Los Angeles. We're going to talk about Donald Trump's executive order that he signed yesterday. It's really a memorandum, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the legality of it and what federal statutes are involved and which ones are not. First of all, I've been watching a lot of coverage today of National Guard troops in Los Angeles. There is nothing for them to do. The ones that I have seen today are at the Immigration Detention Center, and they're all standing in uniform, in formation, helmets, gear, shields, in a line, not moving. There's nothing for them to do. They're just hanging out. 4 members of Congress, I think it was this morning, tried to get into that Immigration Detention Center and were turned away. As a matter of law, members of Congress are permitted to drop in anytime they want to and inspect those kinds of facilities. That was refused to them today. Now, let's talk about the differences, some of the differences that I've observed between some of these National Guard troops and the ICE agents that we've all been watching for the last month or two. The members of the National Guard are wearing the same uniforms. They have their names on their uniforms. They are standing in formation. Their ranks are visible by the insignia on their uniforms. They have the same weapons. They appear as though they are a military unit. Their deployment on American soil to perform law enforcement functions, we'll get to in a moment, and the questionable legality of this. But compare that to the ICE agents that we're seeing. Wearing masks, no uniforms, no insignia, no badges, no names, unmarked vehicles, just kidnapping people and taking them to God knows where. You get picked up and all of a sudden you wake up and you're in Louisiana. And, so those are just some differences that I observed. And the ICE agents are just roaming around doing whatever the hell they want to. They're wearing jeans, they're wearing tennis shoes, they're wearing t-shirts. Some of them are dressed differently than that. But they're all wearing masks and sunglasses and hats and covering their faces. And that's pretty fucking bogus. I saw reports that there were 10 arrests yesterday, Saturday. There's been 1 arrest so far today. Those have been for nonviolent offenses, meaning that, law enforcement came into an area, told people to leave, and some of those people didn't leave, and they got arrested for, failing to obey or whatever. Donald Trump put out a Truth Social post or a statement or something last night praising the National Guard and the results that they've achieved before any of them actually appeared in Los Angeles. So, there's that. This whole thing, I guarantee you that Donald Trump and Stephen Miller, they've been screaming the word insurrection from the top of their lungs for 2 days. And there is so little for these National Guard troops to do that 50 members, I think it's 50 members of the LAPD marched in the Los Angeles Pride Parade today, Sunday. So, yeah. Let's talk about Trump's memo, executive order memo. It is titled the following: Department of Defense Security for the protection of Department of Homeland Security functions. It is a memo to the Secretary of Defense, Attorney General, and Secretary of Homeland Security. So that is Pete Hegseth, Pam Bondi, and Kristi Noem. Boy, that's a real Algonquin roundtable we got going there, man. That is a trifecta of stupid if I've ever seen it. The subject is Department of Defense Security for the protection of Homeland Security functions. So basically calling up the National Guard to provide security for ICE and Customs Border Patrol as they engage in their immigration enforcement actions throughout Los Angeles County. Reading from the document, numerous incidents of violence and disorder have recently occurred and threatened to blah, 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 blah. Who gives a shit? In light of these incidents and credible threats of continued violence by authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States, I hereby call into federal service members and units of the National Guard under 10 U.S.C. 12406 to temporarily protect ICE and other U.S. government personnel while they perform these functions. All right, let's go to U.S.C. 10-12406. Whenever, one, the United States or any commonwealth or possessions is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation, or two, there is rebellion or danger of a rebellion. Donald Trump used the word rebellion, referring to the protesters, against the authority of the government of the United States. Or three, the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Then, if any one of those three, the president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those laws. Orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states or, in the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard. Obviously, Gavin Newsom's not participating in that. Donald Trump is issuing these orders on his own. So 12406 applies specifically to National Guard. Okay, that's important here in a minute. Is 10 U.S.C. 12406 the same as the Insurrection Act? No, it is not. The Insurrection Act of 1807 is codified in a different location, 10 U.S.C. 254, and it empowers the president to call into service the military and the National Guard when requested by a state legislature to address an insurrection, to address insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy in any state which results in the deprivation of constitutionally secured rights. So the Insurrection Act covers Trump activating the military. 10 USC 12406, which he cited in his executive order, does not. Then we get to a paragraph in the executive order. He says, I'm calling up 2,000 members of the National Guard. They shall be on duty for 60 days. In addition, the Secretary of Defense may employ any other members of the regular armed forces as necessary to augment and support the protection of federal functions and property in any manner determined appropriate in his discretion. That is illegal. Active duty military violates the Posse Comitatus Act, and 10 USC 12406 does not override the Posse Comitatus Act. The Insurrection Act does. Trump has not specifically invoked the Insurrection Act, but he is acting as though he has. He cited 10 USC 12406 to justify activating these National Guard members. He gave Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, authority to activate active duty military on the streets of the United States. That is not covered by 10 USC 12406, which Trump cited in the memo. That is covered by 10 USC 254, which is the Insurrection Act. So Trump cited one code section and is behaving as though he incited the Insurrection Act. This is illegal. Is anybody going to challenge this? I would imagine that legal experts and attorneys are going to be filing motions on this. But what Donald Trump is doing right now is illegal. But the hilarious thing is that these National Guard troops are on the ground and there's nothing for them to do in Los Angeles. There is no violence today. They've arrested one person today, and 50 members of LAPD had enough time to go march in the Pride Parade today. So great work, Don.